The day I realized my body wasn't telling me the truth anymore. I used to believe I was still as steady as ever. Sure, I moved a little slower, and maybe I needed an extra second getting up from the couch. But I was still me, independent, capable, strong. Then one afternoon, something changed. I was walking through my kitchen, the same way I had done 1,000 times before. Nothing was in the way, no distractions, no clutter, and yet I stumbled. It wasn't a dramatic fall. I caught myself before hitting the floor, but the moment didn't pass easily. Something inside me froze. I stood there with my hand on the countertop, heart pounding not from exertion, but from realization. What if I hadn't caught myself? That quiet question echoed through the rest of my day. It followed me into the evening, into the way I stepped out of the shower, into the way I reached for the light switch in the hallway. It whispered not just fear, but a deeper truth that balance, something I had always taken for granted, was beginning to fade without asking for permission. And I knew then, this wasn't about being clumsy. It was about safety, about confidence, about how one small moment can quietly steal something we don't even realize is precious until it's gone. If you've ever felt a little unsteady, just for a second, even while doing something ordinary, please comment 1 below. If you haven't yet, comment 0. I'd really love to hear where you are on your journey. In this video, I'm going to share 8 common, everyday habits that may be quietly stealing your balance, your strength, your sense of security. These aren't just facts or warnings. They are stories, lessons I've learned through lived experience and through listening deeply to other women just like you. And please, if this message touches your heart even a little, click subscribe and tap the bell so we don't lose each other in the noise of the internet. This space is for us, and I want to make sure you always have a place to return to. Because what's at stake isn't just balance, it's the confidence to live freely and fully at any age. Mistake number 1. When your balance breaks your confidence. First, it wasn't the fall that scared me. It was the thought that I could fall again, and next time, no one might be there. I remember sitting across the table from my dear friend Carol. She had always been lively, quick with a laugh, always the first to offer help. But this time, her hands were folded tightly in her lap, and her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I haven't been to church in weeks," she admitted softly. "Why?" I asked. She paused. Then, quietly, "I'm afraid I might fall in front of someone." One small trip in the parking lot, just one, had left her knees bruised. But it was her spirit that took the deeper hit. And I realized what she had truly lost wasn't balance in her body. It was balance in her confidence. That's the hidden cost we rarely talk about. Because when we lose physical steadiness, we don't just stumble, we begin to question ourselves. And suddenly, everything feels like a risk: reaching for a top-shelf mug, stepping off a curb, bending to tie a shoe. You begin to scan for danger in places you once moved freely. You avoid outings not because you don't want to go, but because you quietly wonder, will I be able to make it back home without an incident? Will anyone notice if I wobble? Will I look weak? That inner voice, once strong and sure, now whispers uncertainty. And with it comes a subtle shrinking of the world around us. What used to be joyful now feels unsafe. What used to feel like home now feels like an obstacle course. But here's what I've learned, and what I want to say gently to you today. The loss of confidence is not permanent. It's not a sentence. It's a signal, a quiet call to care for yourself more deeply than before. Because balance isn't just about muscles or coordination. It's about trust. Trust in your own body. Trust in your ability to move through the world without fear. And that trust, it can be rebuilt. Sometimes it begins with something as simple and as overlooked as the shoes on your feet. So let's go there next. Mistake number 2. Soft shoes, hard truths. Balance often begins with what lies beneath us, quite literally. Our feet, once so quick to move, now carry the entire memory of a life lived. And yet, few of us consider how much our shoes influence not just our comfort, but our safety, our posture, even our confidence with every step. As we grow older, the architecture of our feet begins to shift. Arches flatten, joints become stiffer, and the natural cushion we once relied on slowly fades. But while our feet change with time, our habits often don't. We continue wearing what we've always worn: soft slippers, loose sneakers, fashionable flats, assuming they'll still serve us well. But here lies a quiet truth: what once felt comfortable may now be quietly undermining our stability. Footwear that lacks grip, structure, or support can increase the risk of imbalance in subtle ways. A worn sole can slip where we least expect. A too loose fit can cause the foot to shift inside the shoe, throwing off our stride, and when the foundation is unstable, the rest of the body follows. Knees overcompensate, hips tighten, the spine adjusts in ways it was never meant to. More than anything, the wrong shoes can make us hesitate, not just physically, but emotionally. That half second of doubt before stepping forward, that need to glance down with every movement it wears on us. It makes us second guess our abilities in places that once felt familiar. But it doesn't have to be this way. Supportive shoes, with firm soles and proper cushioning, can restore more than posture. They can restore dignity. They signal to the body you are safe, you are grounded. And when the body hears that message clearly, it begins to respond. Shoulders lift, steps lengthen. The quiet fear begins to ease. Choosing better shoes is not vanity. It is a gesture of care. It is telling ourselves that comfort and safety are not luxuries, but necessities, and they are well within reach. Because sometimes in the first step to walking tall again is simply choosing the right pair to take you there. Let's take the next step together by exploring the strength your body is still capable of reclaiming. Mistake number 3, the quiet disappearance of strength. Strength, for most of our lives, was something we didn't think twice about. It showed up in the way we carried grocery bags without effort, stood up from a chair in one motion, or climbed stairs without noticing we were climbing at all. But as the years pass, strength doesn't leave us in a dramatic way. It fades quietly, invisibly, until one day we notice it's no longer there. This isn't a weakness. It's not a failure. It's simply nature at work. After the age of 50, the body begins to lose muscle mass, little by little, unless we do something to preserve it. And while this may sound like just another change of aging, its consequences are deeper than we realize. Muscles are more than just physical tools. They are protectors. They catch us when we slip. They stabilize us when we shift. They allow us to move through life with confidence, dignity, and grace. Without strength, the world becomes heavier. We begin to rely on momentum instead of control. Getting up requires effort. Carrying even light items can feel like a strain. And slowly, the body begins to retreat from activity, not because it wants to, but because it no longer feels safe. Yet here is the truth: many forget muscle can be rebuilt, even in later life. Strength doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for consistency. Just a few minutes, a few simple movements, done with care and regularity, can reignite the relationship between body and power. Gentle strength training, whether with small weights, resistance bands, or simply your own body weight, can awaken muscles that have grown silent. And as the body grows stronger, something beautiful happens. Not only do the movements become easier, but so does the belief in oneself. Confidence grows, not from what we look like, but from what we know we can do again. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to someone we almost forgot we were. And that return begins not with lifting something heavy, but with lifting the belief that it's too late. But there's more to balance than just muscle, because even with the strongest legs, we may still stumble. If the world before us begins to blur, let's talk next about the eyes, the silent guides of every step we take. Mistake number 4. When the eyes stop guiding the steps, balance is often thought of as something that lives in the muscles in the ankles, the core, the legs. But in truth, balance begins with the eyes. Vision is the quiet compass that tells the brain where we are in space, how close the ground is, how far the next step might be. And when that compass falters, the rest of the body must guess. With age, the changes in vision are rarely sudden. They are subtle, gradual, and easy to dismiss. The hallway seems darker. The contrast between tile and rug becomes harder to notice. The edge of a step fades into shadow, and without realizing it, we begin to misjudge the world around us by inches, by angles, by hesitation. These misjudgments matter. Because a missed detail, a shadow mistaken for depth, a step overlooked, a corner unseen can turn into a stumble. And even when the body reacts, the delay is just long enough to shift our sense of safety. Wearing outdated prescriptions or scratched lenses can quietly increase the risk of falls. So can walking through dim lighting, where the eyes strain to adjust and the brain works harder to interpret every surface. When vision is unclear, movement becomes uncertain, and with uncertainty comes caution and often fear. But there is peace to be found in simple adjustments. A current eye exam can reveal changes we didn't notice. A fresh pair of lenses, especially with anti-glare and contrast enhancement, can illuminate the world in ways that restore confidence. Good lighting in walkways, bathrooms, and bedrooms isn't just for visibility, it's a gift to the nervous system, a reminder that clarity is possible. Taking care of our vision isn't about vanity, it's about protection. It's about ease. And most of all, it's about restoring our natural connection with the space around us so we no longer have to question the ground beneath our feet. Because when we begin to see clearly again, we also begin to move with clarity, without hesitation, without strain. And yet even perfect vision and strong muscles can't shield us. If the very things meant to help us, like medication, turn out to be quietly working against us, let's talk next about the unseen side effects that may be stealing your balance without your knowledge. Mistake number 5. When medicine heals one thing, but hurts another. For many of us, medications are a quiet part of daily life. A pill in the morning, another before bed, prescribed with care, taken with trust. We follow instructions because we believe in their purpose to ease, to protect, to heal, and often they do. But sometimes what we don't notice is just as important as what we do. As we age, the way our bodies process medication changes. A dosage that once worked perfectly can suddenly become too strong. Combinations that once coexisted peacefully may now create side effects that are subtle, yet deeply disruptive. One of the most overlooked shift in balance: dizziness, lightheadedness, a brief moment of disorientation when rising from a chair or turning too quickly. These symptoms are easy to dismiss. We blame tiredness, dehydration, or simply getting older. But often, they are the body's quiet cry for attention, a sign that something we are taking, even with good intention, is affecting the way we move through the world. And when balance is affected, so is freedom. It's easy to feel helpless when something that is supposed to help makes us feel worse. But helplessness is not the only option. Awareness is the beginning of healing. Keeping a simple record of how you feel, especially after starting a new medication, can be a powerful act of self-care. It helps us notice patterns we might otherwise miss. And speaking up matters. Doctors are trained, yes, but they are not in your body. Only you know what you feel. Describing dizziness, fogginess, or feeling off may not seem important, but it is. A small adjustment in dose or timing may be all it takes to restore balance, both physically and emotionally. There is strength in advocating for yourself, because medication should never cost you your steadiness. It should never chip away at your confidence. And with the right conversations, it doesn't have to. Sometimes healing comes not from doing more, but from noticing more and giving ourselves permission to question, to adjust, to reclaim what feels right. But what happens when, even with medication adjusted, we still find ourselves reaching out not for help, but for the furniture around us? Let's explore next the quiet habit many of us pick up and why it may be doing more harm than we think. Mistake number 6. When holding onto furniture feels safer than asking for help. There is a quiet instinct many of us develop with age. We reach out. Not always in obvious ways, but subtly, automatically. A hand to the wall when turning a corner, a touch to the back of a chair while crossing the room, A pause near the counter just long enough to steady ourselves. It doesn't always feel like fear. It feels like being careful. This habit, known quietly among health professionals as furniture walking, often becomes our unspoken method of staying upright. We tell ourselves it's fine that we're managing, that as long as we're still moving on our own, we're doing well. But what lies beneath this habit is not just the need for support, it's the quiet avoidance of something deeper: vulnerability. Many of us carry an invisible hesitation when it comes to assistive tools like a cane. We fear what it might mean, that we become fragile, that others will see us as less capable, that we'll lose a part of ourselves, our identity, our dignity, our independence. But what if the opposite were true? What if reaching for a cane was not a symbol of weakness, but of wisdom? What if it meant not giving up, but choosing differently? Choosing stability over struggle, choosing security over secrecy, choosing to walk tall again, not despite needing help, but because we allowed ourselves to receive it. Because the truth is, this furniture was never built to hold us. Kitchen counters weren't designed for balance. Walls were not made to catch us. And relying on them, especially with full arms or in unexpected moments, adds risk, not safety. When we hold on to things not meant to hold us, we remain one misstep away from harm. But when we place our trust in tools designed for support, we give ourselves permission to move with confidence again. Using a cane or walker does not change who you are. It protects who you've always been. There is no shame in seeking stability. There is only wisdom in choosing safety over pride. And once we release that internal resistance, what we gain is not just balance, but peace. Still, support alone isn't enough. To truly reclaim steadiness, we must rebuild what time has gently eroded our body's instinct to balance. And that begins with something few of us were ever taught to practice. Let's explore next the quiet power of intentional balance training and why it may be the most loving gift you can give your future self. Mistake number 7. Relearning balance. The daily ritual. We never knew we needed balance. For most of our lives, it's something we never had to think about, like breathing, blinking, or sleeping. It was simply there, a quiet companion, unnoticed, always doing its job. But balance is not passive, it's not guaranteed, and most of all, it's not permanent. What many of us don't realize is that balance is a skill, a physical ability that needs practice, reinforcement, and awareness. And like any skill, when neglected, it begins to fade, not in one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of tiny hesitations. A moment of wobble when stepping off a curb, a brief sway when standing from a chair, a tightening in the shoulders when walking across uneven ground. These moments are not clumsiness. They are whispers from the body, gently saying, "I've forgotten how to adjust." With age, certain physical reflexes, especially those tied to balance, diminish if left unstimulated. The ankles become stiffer. The core muscles, once engaged with every step, grow quieter. The brain, no longer challenged to make rapid micro-corrections, slows its response time. And so, even without any medical diagnosis or injury, we begin to feel uncertain. But here lies the quiet, hopeful truth: balance can be trained again, not only in your 60s, but in your 70s, 80s, and beyond. Unlike many aspects of health that require intensive effort or complex routines, balance responds to small, consistent attention. Just a few minutes a day done mindfully can awaken the systems in your body that remember how to keep you steady. And no, you don't need a gym membership. You don't need fancy equipment or youthful athleticism. All you need is intention. Standing on one foot while brushing your teeth, walking heel to toe across a hallway, shifting weight from side to side while holding onto a chair, gently turning your head side to side as you rise from sitting. These aren't exercises, they are invitations. Invitations to reconnect with the parts of yourself that still know how to move through the world with grace. Balance practice isn't about testing your limits. It's about reestablishing trust with your body. Trust that it will catch you. Trust that you don't have to brace for impact with every step. Trust that freedom of movement is still yours to claim. And here's something deeply healing: when you begin to feel physically steadier, your emotional world begins to shift too. You stop avoiding places with stairs. You stop scanning the floor for every uneven crack. You stop saying no to invitations. Not because you suddenly feel young, but because you feel able, capable, in control again. And this feeling, this quiet return to self, is often the most profound gift of all. Because balance is not just a physical state, it's an emotional permission slip. It tells us you are still strong. You are still here. You are still enough. We spend so many years of our lives caring for others, holding them up, making sure they don't fall. Perhaps now is the time to care for our own grounding, to offer ourselves the same gentle strength we've extended so freely. Making balance practice a daily ritual doesn't require discipline. It requires compassion. It requires kindness, not the kind we give others, but the kind we learn to give ourselves. A few minutes a day. That's all. That's all it takes to remind your legs they still belong to you, to remind your mind that it still knows how to respond, to remind your spirit that it is not fragile, it is simply waiting for you to return to it. So let this be your quiet revolution, not with strain, not with pressure, but with a smile, a stretch, a breath, and a moment of presence. And as your body begins to remember what balance feels like, you may notice something else too: a lightness, a readiness, maybe even the return of something you didn't realize you'd lost: joy. Because balance, once restored, doesn't just keep us upright, it invites us to move through the world again, not carefully, but confidently. And yet, even as we train the body and calm the mind, there is another silent factor that often goes unnoticed. One that seems so simple, so obvious, we forget it altogether: water. Let's now talk about hydration, the most underestimated ally in your journey back to balance. Mistake number 8, the balance you can drink. Why hydration changes everything. Of all the lessons aging teaches us, perhaps the most surprising is that something as simple, as ordinary, as overlooked as water can quietly shape how safe and steady we feel in our own bodies. Hydration is more than just avoiding thirst. It's a foundational act of care, one that touches every system in the body, including the one that keeps us upright. The body is made largely of water, and every cell, muscle, and nerve depends on it to function. But as we age, our ability to sense thirst diminishes. The signals grow weaker, the cues fade, and so, without even noticing, we begin to run low. And when the body runs low, it begins to speak. Not through obvious signs, but through whispers: a foggy mind in the afternoon, a wave of dizziness when standing too quickly, a heaviness behind the eyes, a vague sense of tiredness we mistake for just getting older. These quiet discomforts are often the early language of dehydration. Even mild dehydration can alter the body's ability to regulate blood pressure and maintain equilibrium. The brain becomes slower to process spatial orientation. The muscles tire faster, and the risk of imbalance rises, not because we are clumsy, but because the system that once worked like a symphony is now playing off tune. But here's the beauty: this is one of the simplest, most gentle things we can change. We don't need pills or programs or professionals. We need a glass of water consistently, compassionately, and not just any liquid. True hydration comes from water in its purest forms: filtered water, gentle herbal teas, broths with minimal salt. It means choosing water over soda, balance over convenience. It means making hydration not an afterthought, but a daily offering of self-kindness. Creating a new hydration habit can be both practical and meaningful. A clear pitcher placed where you see it often, a favorite mug next to your chair, a small notepad or gentle reminder on your phone. These aren't chores, they're symbols, quiet commitments to nurturing the body that has carried you this far. And the result: clarity, lightness, a quiet return of energy, a softening of strain in the joints. Most importantly, a renewed sense of presence in your own body. Because when we hydrate, we nourish more than just cells, we nourish steadiness, resilience, and peace. In a world that often demands so much from us, choosing to drink water becomes an act of subtle rebellion. It says, I matter, my body matters, and I choose to care for it. Not because it is young, but because it is still mine. Water will not erase time, but it can ease its effects. It can soften the edges of fatigue. It can bring back the feeling of being alert, alive, and rooted in the moment. And in doing so, it offers us something precious, another step toward wholeness. Still, there is one more place where many of us remain most vulnerable. And ironically, it's the space we know most intimately, our own homes. Let's now explore how the very place we feel safest can quietly become a source of risk, and what we can do, one small change at a time, to turn it back into a sanctuary. Sometimes, the path to steadiness is as simple as a sip of water. But other times, the greatest risks to our balance aren't inside us at all. They're quietly waiting in the very place we trust most, home. Mistake number 9. The hidden dangers in the home. You thought you knew. Our homes are more than places. They are memories. They hold the echoes of laughter, the aroma of old recipes, the warmth of loved ones. Over the years, they become extensions of who we are: familiar, comforting, beloved. And yet, familiarity can sometimes soften our caution. The very spaces we trust most can also be the ones that quietly betray us. The truth is, this most falls happen at home. Not because our homes are dangerous, but because we stop seeing them as changeable. We assume that what has always worked will continue to work, that the rug we step over every morning will still lie flat, that the dimly lit hallway we've walked through 1,000 times is still good enough, that the bathtub doesn't need a grab bar because it never did before. But our bodies have changed, and with those changes comes the need to see our homes with new eyes. This doesn't mean fear, it means wisdom. A rug that once felt cozy may now be a tripping hazard. A cord stretched across a walkway may go unnoticed until it catches a foot. A shelf placed just slightly too low may require bending that strains the back. These are not faults, they are signs of life evolving, and so must our surroundings. The good news, small changes can bring enormous peace. Non-slip mats in the bathroom, a sturdy grab bar beside the toilet, brighter, warmer lighting in hallways and bedrooms, motion sensor nightlights that gently glow without disturbing rest, furniture placement that allows for open, steady walking paths. Even something as simple as moving frequently used items to waist level can prevent an unexpected fall. These are not signs of weakness. They are acts of self-respect. They say, my safety matters. My ease matters. My life deserves support, not struggle, and perhaps even more beautifully. These changes don't just protect us. They protect the people we love, grandchildren who visit, friends who stop by, a partner who moves through the same space. A safer home benefits everyone who walks through its doors. There is no need for major renovations, no call for expensive overhauls, only an invitation to walk through your home, slowly, mindfully, and ask, does this still serve me as I am now? If the answer is no, then know this: you have every right to adjust, to adapt, to make space for your present, not just your past. Because safety is not about walls or floor. It's about feeling free in your own skin, in your own space. And a home that evolves with you becomes not just a shelter, but a sanctuary. But even with all the lighting, grab bars, and stable furniture, there is one thing we cannot replace: the emotional impact of the first fall. Let's now turn to something deeper, the silent echo that lingers long after the body heals. The fear of falling again. Mistake number 10. The first fall. What heals and what lingers. There are falls that bruise the body, and then there are falls that bruise something far more tender: the trust we hold in ourselves. For many older adults, the first fall is not just an accident, it is a turning point. Not because the injury is always severe, but because it fractures something invisible, our sense of safety in our own body. Before the fall, movement was unconscious. Walking down the stairs, reaching into a cabinet, stepping over a small threshold, these were natural, unthinking gestures. But after the fall, those same actions feel different, weighted, charged, each one requiring a moment of mental negotiation. Will this be safe? What if I slip again? What if no one is there to help me? This is the unseen aftermath of falling. It's not about the scrape or the strain. It's about the story our mind begins to tell us afterward. You are fragile now. Be careful always. Stay in. Don't risk it. And that story, when left unchallenged, can slowly shrink a life. We begin to avoid uneven sidewalks, avoid trips to the market, avoid social events that require stairs or unfamiliar terrain, avoid living fully not because we want to, but because fear tells us it's safer this way. But here's the deeper truth: fear, while natural, is not meant to be permanent. It is not your final story. Fear is a signal. It tells us what matters. It tells us where healing is needed, not just physically, but emotionally. And healing begins when we meet that fear with curiosity, not shame. When we say to ourselves, yes, I fell, but I also rose. I am still here. Rebuilding confidence after a fall is not about forgetting it happened. It's about reclaiming the space it tried to take from you. It's about relearning trust, not in perfection, but in resilience. This can be done in gentle ways, by returning to movement slowly, by setting up the home to reduce risk, by speaking to someone about the fear, not hiding it, by practicing balance intentionally, by reminding yourself, day by day, that your body's not broken, it's still learning. And most of all, by letting go of the idea that asking for help or moving more carefully somehow makes you less. It doesn't. It makes you wise. Falling is not failure. Staying afraid, that's the only thing that steals more than the fall ever could. So let your next steps, no matter how small, be acts of courage. Let each one whisper back to your doubt, I am still strong. I am still capable. I am still here. Because you are, and you always have been. Do you remember how this story began? With a single stumble in the kitchen, a small moment that shook something much deeper inside. Not because of the stumble itself, but because of what it whispered afterward. Can I still trust myself? Through these 10 reflections, we've explored the many quiet ways our balance can be disrupted through shoes, strength, vision, hydration, habits, and fear. But underneath them all lies one unshakable truth. You are not broken. You are becoming. Aging doesn't take your power. It simply invites you to use it differently, with more grace, more care, more tenderness. So if your steps have slowed, let them be steady. If your movements are cautious, let them be wise. And if your heart feels a little unsure, let it also remember its courage. Because each small act, every glass of water, every stretch, every thoughtful choice is a declaration: I am still here, and I choose to walk through this life with presence. Now, I invite you to share. What part of this journey spoke most to your heart? Leave a comment below. I read every word, and your story may be just what someone else needs today. If this video touched you, please subscribe and turn on the bell so we never lose this gentle space we've built together. Your life still holds balance and beauty and the quiet strength to move forward one mindful step at a time.